Hello, everybody, and welcome in. It's a Monday night, which means it's time for a recap episode for the Lions Grid. We will be talking about the Lions Week 8 game against the Miami Dolphins. And unfortunately, if you're a Lions fan, just like the last 5 weeks, we're unfortunately sitting here today having to talk about a loss for the Lions. The Lions, as you can tell in the headline, blew a 10-point halftime lead. It was 27-17, and the Miami Dolphins were able to outpace the Detroit Lions offense, especially in the second half, and ended up winning the game 31-27, sending the Lions to 1-6 on the season. Not great. No bueno. So we're gonna sit here. I mean, unfortunately, it is what it is. When you're talking Lions football, unfortunately, if you've been doing it any time in the last 60 years, you've more than likely been talking about losses more than you've been talking about wins. So it should be. I'll try and keep things pretty brief. I'm not going to try and dump on the Lions too much. Sort of give you my thoughts on some things, and then we'll move on and see what we can do with the Lions here in future upcoming weeks. But I think Joe and I were talking yesterday during the pregame episode, and we're saying it was too late to give up on the Lions and this current regime with Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. I'll address that here in a little bit. I certainly am comfortable with Brad Holmes, but with the Dan Campbell situation, I'm a little less comfortable there. So we'll get into that here in just a few moments as we progress into the episode. So as we sort of were saying there, it's sort of a game of a tale of two halves, really. The Lions' offense, after not scoring a touchdown the previous 2 weeks against the Patriots and the Dallas Cowboys, did come out and had a pretty strong first half showing here against the Dolphins. It seemed like this game, as me and Joe sort of predicted, could be a bit of a shootout, and it certainly was a game, at least in the first half, that was interesting to watch. I think there was quite a bit going on. The Lions had scored the 27 points with 326 yards in the first half. You had seen some fumble, or you had that fumble that was forced with Malcolm Rodriguez picking that up. So you were seeing a lot of good things out of the Lions in the first half. Um, but as sort of mentioned, as teased a little bit there, one of the reasons I'm not super sold on Dan Campbell is because of the fact that you look at the Dolphins in comparison. The Dolphins were down 10. They made adjustments in the second half, and they came out and they really took it to the Lions. They continued the success they had on offense, and they were able to then stop what the Lions were doing offensively and really limit the success that they had been having. And then, big kudos to the Miami Dolphins coaching staff for being able to recognize what was going on at halftime, talk to their players, get them in position, and really shift their game plan so that they could then ultimately win this game. And that's something that I think I've been missing here from Dan Campbell on this Lions coaching staff is that, typically, we see the Lions get out to a strong start. Their offense looks good. Then halftime rolls around. And usually in the second half of games, the Lions go quiet, particularly in the fourth quarter. Um, and it's just, it, they've done well in games to build a lead, but they just can't hold on to that lead. And I think, obviously, one of the themes that we have been talking about throughout the season is that the good teams in the NFL, they play consistently. They give you four full quarters of offense and defense, and really make it difficult for the other team to find success. And we haven't seen that with the Lions, and that's why they're not a good team. They don't play those four consistent quarters. They had a lot of success again in the first half of the game, but when it came to the second half of the game, the offense sort of disappeared. And the Lions defense, unfortunately, they did have that turnover, that fumble they forced on the Dolphins opening series. But on Miami's next five possessions, they scored four touchdowns. That's rough. They did see some success early on again, but then that wasn't that level of effort, that level of success was not continued on by the defense throughout throughout the remainder of the game. So, there were some good things. We saw it was nice to see DeAndre Swift come back. For him to get that touchdown pass from Jared Goff. TJ Hawkinson had that nice 58-yard reception. So there was a lot of good things. Williams, of course, Jamal Williams keeps. This was his fourth multi-touchdown game of the season. So Jamal, two touchdown. Williams continues to vulture up some fantasy football points. So if you're a fantasy football owner, certainly a guy who is paying off for you. But you know, it's it's disappointing, right? The first half of the game certainly looked like, hey, the Lions certainly have a shot of winning this game, even though the defense is kind of struggling against this offense. But again, I think what separates the Dolphins, who I do consider they're not a great team, right? I don't think they are the best team in the AFC by far, but I think they're a team that's trending the right direction in the AFC. And the reason I think that is because their coaching staff at halftime was able to look at what the Lions were doing, identify ways that they could help uh, sort of slow that offense down, and then they executed. So in my book, they did exactly what you're supposed to do when things aren't going to plan. Once you get into that locker room at halftime, you need to make adjustments. They did it, and they ended up winning this game. So kudos to kudos to the Dolphins. Obviously, it's rough. They are I don't know how you match up against this team with Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. Um, they're two fantastic talents. There's a reason why both of them are two of the top five receivers in receiving yards this season. It's because it's difficult to cover them individually, and when you have them both out on the field at the same time, it's a nightmare for defenses. So, I think really, eh, it, it's just disappointing, right? Like, where do we go from here? Jared Goff, I think, had a much better afternoon against the Dolphins. He ended up going 27 of 37 for 321 yards and a touchdown. He didn't have any picks, and showed that he did, especially in that first half, did a fantastic job of sort of managing the game and sort of quieted a lot of that criticism that I think he had from the Cowboys and Patriots game. I don't put the offensive struggles on him so much as I don't think that the Lions coaching staff really put them in the best position in the second half to succeed. Whether it was not identifying what was really working and trying to really push the gas pedal there, or not recognizing the fact that, hey, the Dolphins are going to try and take this away from us. We need to have an answer for that. I really put that on the coaching staff because he was being doing a much better job of being controlling the ball, not being uh, trying to force things and have unnecessary turnovers. So I got to give Jared Goff a thumbs up for this week. Speaking of the Lions coaching staff, there was a change made today to that coaching staff. The defensive back coach Aubrey Pleasant um, was let go from the team, but I uh, outside of and he made it on to Monday Night Football's Come On Man, Amani Awarie, him lining up so far offsides that it was comical. If you haven't seen that, you should go check it out. But I mean, that just kind of is sort of reminiscent of the year that Awarie has had. Last year he was having a Pro Bowl caliber season, and for whatever reason, he is in a funk this year, and that offsides penalty sort of just representative of the year that he's having because I don't know what's going on in his mind and just clearly lined up offsides. Just nothing else you can say about it. Just it's why it was on. Come on, man! It was just way offsides. Is that going to be the spark that gets the Lions to really turn things around? I doubt it. Um, but I mean, we'll have to see. The good news is they do have the Packers coming in to they're coming into Ford Field, which is nice because if that game was being played in Green Bay, certainly I would think that the Packers, given the line struggles at Lambeau, the Packers would definitely be the favorites in this. But the Packers haven't looked great either. They have been struggle city. They are themselves on a multiple. Let's see how many games are they? They're on a 4 game losing streak themselves. So you got the Lions of 5 games. You got the Packers with 4 games. Certainly a chance for either one of these two teams to turn it around, but realistically, you know, it's it's almost gotten to the point, and it's sad to say we're talking about it, but for this season, what's the point? Just keep piling on the losses, try and get a better draft pick, and we'll see you next year. Because I don't think there's something that the Lions are going to be able to do to turn things around so drastically here in this season. I did see that they are sort of open to anything and everything before the trade deadline, but I think really if you're going to, uh, you know, stick to the 3-year calendar that sort of Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes promised when they sort of took the reins. I think you don't want to sell too hard, and more so want to be on the buying side of things uh, if you can get somebody who's a building block for the future. Otherwise, you sort of stay the course. You hope the Rams continue to struggle. You certainly continue to do what you're doing, and seems like the first pick may fall your way. So, yeah, then you just get better in the offseason, I guess, because right now, at 1-6, um, taking a look at the NFC North as a bigger picture, obviously we mentioned the Packers are struggling. They're at 3-5 and on a 4-game losing streak. Right now, the Vikings, it's their division to lose. They're sitting at 6-1. They have victories against both the Packers and the Lions. I really find it hard to believe that the Lions, in particular, maybe Green Bay can catch them, but I think this should really be uh, an easy divisional win for the Vikings. And then really, I don't think the Lions stand much of a chance of challenging for a wild card spot in the playoffs. And if you're not going to be in the playoffs, I don't think there's much sense in having, just getting a few wins here just to make the record look better because it's not going to help you get the talent you need to improve the roster. Obviously, there's no guarantees with earlier draft picks. It's just the probability, right? The likelihood of drafting a good player with a higher pick is just naturally higher than it is the lower you are. Doesn't mean you can't get good talent lower in the draft. Doesn't mean that you can't take people who are busts at the top of the draft, as Lions fans well know. But having that earlier pick certainly helps make it more likely that you're going to get a player that can contribute and really help turn things around for your franchise. And really, I think for Detroit fans, this is another year of just sitting back and just wondering why. Uh, there's not a lot of. Uh, I think this year was particularly cruel with everything that went on with HBO Hard Knocks and everything. Like, I feel like there was a lot of artificial excitement and optimism pumped into it. I think Lions fans traditionally like to have a lot of optimism coming out of the draft and free agency and heading into the season. But I feel like there were some third party sources that helped contribute to that and elevate levels higher than they usually are. And as a result, this year's just stings a little bit too, more so than in past years. And again, I think part of that also is the fact that the Bears and the Packers aren't very good. And even at 6-1, the Vikings, they don't feel like they're that much better than everybody else. They just have that record. So, um, yeah, it's just a painful year, and we have 11 more games to go. So we will. Uh, is it 11 more games or how many more weeks is it? Let's double check here. We have what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. 9 more weeks. No, 10 more weeks. Sorry. I can count. That's 5 and 5. 10 more weeks. Um, we're playing the Packers twice, and of course, we're playing the Packers next week. We're playing the Bears twice during that span. You get the Jags, the Giants, the Panthers, the Jets. We play our second game against the Vikings, and then we get the Bills on Thanksgiving, which could be ugly. Um, yeah, I guess we'll watch the games and we'll take it a week at a time and see what these lines can do. But you know, don't consider I don't consider myself to be picking the Lions too much as winners for the rest of the season. It's a little bittersweet to have the Dolphins pick come true, but like I said, until the Lions really start to turn things around and start to show me they'll win some of these games I think they can win. I'm just gonna go with the other team because so far, 1-6. Usually, the other team has the higher probability of being right. So what can you do? Thank you for tuning in to the Lions Grid. My name is Kevin Marhine. You can find us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, and Twitter. Just go ahead and search for the Lions Grid. And then when you find our profile, feel free to go ahead and like or follow that, as well as sharing some of our latest videos. We really do appreciate you helping our channels grow. And by interacting with the content and following and liking the channels, that's the best way to do that at this time. So appreciate you not only stopping by, but helping to support what we do here at the Lions Grid. Again, unfortunately, a 10-point halftime lead blown by the Lions, 1-6 on the season. Hang in there, Lions fans. It's only 10 games to go. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Kevin Marhine, and we will catch you during the next episode, which should be coming to you live from Bangalore, India, as our first ever international episode of the Lions Grid, as I will be over in India for a wedding. My buddy Karthik getting married to Anushka. So congratulations to them, and we'll see you during the next episode. Bye bye.